Denton Davidson here for Gold Derby, and I am joined by Kevin McKnight, the cinematographer of Nat Geo's genius Aretha. Kevin, thanks for talking with me today. I just want to start off with, what are your initial thoughts when you got a call to shoot a bio series on the Queen of Soul, and is there any added pressure when you have to, bring someone of that iconic status to the screen?
First off, the script was sent in. There was some poetry in there that just really excited me. To how to do that visually. There was the whole Genius franchise, knowing that's a project. So those things all hit at once. Anthony Hemingway had sent me the script, said this is something he was interested in. Read it and let's talk. And we were excited right from that point.
And did you have a relationship with Anthony at that point from previous work, or?
Oh, I've done the past 5 years. I've done 4 series with him, and we've probably done 4, 5, 6 pilots. So yes, we go way back, and he's occupied a lot of my time. So at this point, we are so in sync. I start to say something and he's already working on it. He says something, I finish it. So I could only wish everybody has that kind of collaboration. Yeah. It's grown and it continues to grow.
And in terms of, Genius, the series, what qualities about Aretha Franklin did you want to make sure you brought to the screen to show viewers, what is the genius of Aretha Franklin?
Very personal to me. In the turmoil of 60s, 70s, civil rights, all of that, those become big points to want to hit and visually tell. For me, the point of Aretha, for me, the genius of Aretha, she connected people, and it's beyond just connection, and beyond just a limited group and a time frame. To this day, we're still affected. You hear Aretha song, you know it.
And then, so this series spans across, 5 decades. I think it starts off in the 40s, goes through the 90s. When you met up with Anthony, how did you decide what your vision of that would look like in terms of the look of the series?
On all our projects, the first thing we always start with is a riffing session to build a word cloud.
Okay.
I should have sent you some of this information. So we'll sit there and come up with, let's say 50 poignant words that mean something, and that will build over the course of maybe a few days. A 2 o'clock in the morning text. How about this one? So we align these words up of everything that has meaning to us. Then we kind of put them into a visual. We'll build a physical word cloud on Aretha. We had taken a picture, a drawing of her, more of a caricature, and we placed those words on the face. So the words that, and in that word cloud, words get bigger and distorted. We play with those as they have meaning to us, bigger, smaller, upside down, sideways, grouped together. That word cloud is usually our first, our first ideas about what we're just thinking, and it's a riffing session.
And the flashbacks to her childhood are seen in black and white, and as she becomes an adult and transforms into the superstar, the story progresses in colors, but those flashbacks are always in black and white. What are the technical challenges and differences between working in a black and white setting and a color setting?
First off, the transition or our timeline, our story timeline. We had from the to 1953, and it's really her solo performance. And that solo performance is the birth of Aretha. And those are the terms we use. That's the birth of Aretha. The flowering, the budding. It was Dorothy opening the door to Oz. Everything changed at that point. So we had done another series where we had done some flashbacks in a toned kind of black and white. As we were putting this together, we played with enough looks from desaturated and came back, and I always kind of came back to this black and white idea. We went with it. I'm going to be honest with you, in choosing black and white, a lot of flags start popping up. People start questioning it. Is this always going to be in black and white? Are we going to take this all the way through? How far? Episode 4 is mostly 1940s. Is it going to all be in black and white? So there's questions. Always in those questions are, can we get back to color?
Because people are worried that you're going to lose the viewer in black and white.
Black and white has a very subjective point of view for anyone viewing. It can be an automatic clip for my kids who are 27 and 25. It's kind of a turnoff. They don't see it like that. They want more of the color. So there's always the concern. So we always had to, photographically, I had to protect color too. So I built a LUT, a lookup table for us to have a black and white look. As I was lighting and on the set, I would flash back to color to make sure our colors also. So technically, I was bouncing back and forth to maintain always within my head to be our black and white. And I thought our black and white look up table was beautiful because it has a richness to it, a little bit of warmth to it. And it told Anthony really wanted to make sure that our timelines they were really had their own looks. So we had our 40s look up until from her solo through the 70s was a whole nother look. And that one kind of has a little bit of a nostalgia look to it. The highlights are a little on the yellow side. The bottom tones, our darker tones, had a little bit of, they're contaminated with a little bit of cyan, just so it had a kind of an aged feel. And then by the time we got into late 70s and on, Aretha the celebrity, Aretha the royalty, that's where we introduced jewel tones. You saw some magentas and some, and the colors became much more poppy. That was Aretha the Queen.
Yeah, everything. It gets more bold. It
gets very bold by the time. Look at Aretha. She played very classic in all the way up through black and white. Even in her mid sections, it was still kind of Aretha that we've seen in all the iconic photographs. And then, boy, there was the point where the hairdos and always the wardrobe was stunning, but the hairdos and everything became grandiose.
And regardless of whether it's black and white or in color, you had this way of lighting the characters in such a great way, despite the various costumes and skin tones. What's the trick to making sure that people look their best on camera?
I had a lot of different skin tones, and those are value placements for me. You're choosing where you're placing those values. For a lot of what we didn't do a lot of little movie lights up in the ceiling and stuff. We tried to keep everything pretty big sourced on the floor, even when we weren't up in the ceilings. I had articulating light boxes, pretty big light boxes that I could tip, and I could drop down on the set. So we would pull ceiling panels when we weren't seeing up there in these big wide shots, and those big sources become beautiful reflective panels on skin. Okay. So you're never really dealing with harsh shadows on people. It was and especially in dealing with all the different skin tones we had. It gives a beautiful, it's a beautiful reflection in all skin tones. Because of our color palettes, we were all over the place. Most of that light was extremely warm. Once again, and we learned as we went. Cynthia, to me, always looked. There was a couple stage things I lit her cooler. But I always thought she looked really beautiful with a little slightly warmer light, and that played into our LUTs and everything too. Cynthia has these beautiful expressive eyes also.
I was going to mention Cynthia Erivo, and just you've worked with her before, but I think to take on this role in this way, there's so many scenes where you're just right in her face. Is what kind of actor does it take to hold their composure through all of that, and how can an actor affect your ability or inability to get the shots that you want?
Great question, because we push the envelope all the time. Part of our narrative voice in this whole thing was we didn't want the audience to be third person perspective and back away from everybody. We wanted the audience to feel a part of what's going on, a part of the whirlwind of the 60s, the 70s, a part of Aretha's world. So that comes from having a close proximity of camera to talent. Cynthia, from my previous experience with her, I pushed the camera in there. This time, because we were dealing with a lot of what's going on in our mind, her psychology. Her eyes, once again, are very expressive. But that camera would be up to 2.5 feet away from her. She tuned it out. She's able to she made comments. Kevin, you're bringing that camera in close, right? She could tune it out, and that gave us some of those moments where it's just her eyes looking. We played with speeds on those too, to be slightly off speed, not to be really noticeable, but maybe that the eyes lift up just a little bit slower than normal. But for Cynthia, she's able to just completely forget that the camera's just right. I mean, it's right there. And because of that, we kept on pushing it.
And that Amazing Grace episode specifically just comes to mind. There's such a rawness of that whole scene and episode. Was there a difference in shooting that?
episode 6 took on a completely different feel and vibe. When we come into that whole storytelling, she's in rehab. We wanted to make her feel completely disoriented. And we took away that veneer of beauty of Aretha. And she wakes up and she's kind of in a funk. We take her in, that takes us up into the performance. At the performance, we switched to a completely different approach, mocking Pollock's documentary. So at that point, I created a new 16 millimeter low. It had a more grain, or added quite a bit of grain to it. We went to a different series of lenses, small handheld, and everything's handheld, and small handheld zooms. And the guys played the zooms like what was in the 70s with where documentary was. The documentary cameraman's approach is he's getting various angles, knowing that maybe it's not used, but we would use those. Like the docu was lit very raw. Hard for a DP to step back and just let stuff happen. Hard light there, but a lot of shooting back into the lights.
Well, congratulations on all your work on Genius Aretha. Good luck to you this season. We want to encourage all of our viewers to subscribe to our page and make your Emmy predictions at goldderby.com. Thanks for chatting with me, Kevin. It was great getting to learn more about you and your work on this series. So thanks so much.
Right on. Thank you.